So, The Deadseat is a brand new indie horror game released by Curious Fox Socks, which as far as I can tell is a dev team consisting of 3 people. One of them is Isaac X, who directed Poppy Playtime chapters 1 through 3. So this is an experienced team, clearly knowledgeable enough to make a product of a certain level of quality. In fact, they already released a comedic action roguelike last year. But today we're talking about The Deadseat. The premise of this game is that you're a kid in the backseat of your parents' car playing games on your DS-like system called the Game Kid. But as you play the game, the difference between the game and reality starts to become blurry as you have to collect items in-game to ward off monsters that are attacking the car in the real world. Now, immediately, this game sounded FNAF-y to me. But is it truly FNAF-y? Yes. Yes, it is. It's really weird how much this game is essentially a FNAF fan game, but with its own unique premise and story to make it its own game. Let's break down the game, its structure, and how it actually plays. So the game starts you off in the backseat of your parents' car. Mom and dad are arguing, so you whip out the good old Game Kid to distract yourself with a game where you are also driving down an open road. The game immediately introduces us to something called the Happy Cave, a place that would grant us freedom. We then play as a little red guy in this open forest filled with chicken and items for us to collect. In this first level, we collect a camera, which acts as the main mechanic of the game. The game as in Deadseat, not the in-game game. We get the camera from the game in real life, is what I'm saying. Later on, these sections are meant to collect different items that are not essential but help with survival, like boards to barricade broken windows. We're then introduced to the main structure of the game. On our Game Kid, we play a game where we're driving and we need to collect gas canisters to keep going and avoid obstacles that will make us take damage. We do this whilst using the items we collected in-game beforehand to defend ourselves from the monsters attacking the car IRL. This creates a very FNAF-like gameplay loop where we're checking our game to make sure we're playing it correctly, whilst looking left, right, and behind us to make sure we're safe. And spoiler alert, this gets real tough later into the game. At some point you have to flash the monsters with your lights only if their eyes aren't glowing red, so you need to pay super close attention while still keeping a fast reaction time. There's also this monster that spawns in the in-game game that indicates that you need to press W to jump to the front of the car and swerve out of the way. This game is a lot like something like Midnight Evil, that one game from the Slaughter Me Street devs, or the upcoming FNAF fan game Blood and Gears. In all of these examples, you actively partake in an activity whilst fending off enemies around you. And I think all of these examples are really good, or at least show potential in the case of Blood and Gears. But in the case of The Deadseat, I cannot just talk about the gameplay. It's got a fun loop, and it's pretty creative, and it's interesting how FNAF-like it is, but the story of this game is insane and unique. I'm going to try my best to break down and describe the events of the game over the entire 10 levels. In level 1, Mom and Dad are fighting and fighting, until they become big creepy monsters that talk about how our protagonist Caleb thinks the aforementioned cave is real. I believe this is simply meant to be Caleb's view of his parents whilst they fight. It's representative of a child's mind and how they interpret something like violence or even simply arguing. Level 2. The game tells us it will help us reach this happy place. Dad says the GPS is being inaccurate, but decides to keep going the same direction he was already going in anyway. In level 3, a big monster starts chasing us in the section where we collect items. This is also the monster you have to swerve out of the way to avoid, like I said earlier. At the end of the level, the GPS tells Caleb that this is the family he gets, and it's all that he'll get. Level 4, in the section where you collect items, there are 2 dead bodies. One is blue and was the driver, and one is pink and was the passenger. Perhaps this is a bit of foreshadowing. In level 5, the game tells us there is a turn coming up ahead, and that we have to go left instead of right. In the section where we collect items, the chickens are now flashing back and forth between chickens to being dead bodies. But we still eat them anyway. Perhaps this is a bit of foreshadowing. Once the level is finished, the game tells you your turn is coming up. Caleb jumps up to the front of the car and grabs the wheel and turns it left while his parents, in demonic form, freak out. He crashes the car, killing them both. He tries to talk to them, but of course, they do not answer. Caleb's legs hurt, and he is hungry, and the game asks you, who's first, with the options being Mom and Dad. And Caleb consumes whichever one you pick. Days and days pass, both parents end up getting eaten anyway, until finally your game starts talking to you again. It tells Caleb he did everything right, and now that his legs have had time to heal, he's finally ready. You take 100 steps through this strange forest that shapes into a pixelated one, whilst ominous music plays, and you finally made it. You're at the Happy Cave. A strange face with large hands welcomes you, and that's where the main game ends. This is already so strange as far as trying to figure out what's actually going on and what's real and what isn't. But I can mostly make sense of it, I think. Caleb was being manipulated by his game into killing and unfortunately eating his parents, so he could reach this divine place of peace called the Happy Cave. However, there is a hard mode, 5 more levels, and it makes everything so much more confusing. Level 6 starts with a book that we'll see throughout hard mode. It warns of a voice that infects the imagination of children, and how if a child eats of his supper, they'll become a voice in his choir. Once we start the level and find ourselves back in the back of the car, our dead parents are looking at us and telling us we don't get to come back, and the car is gone. Level 7's page of the book says he seeks those who are broken, those who feel alone, and tells that if they obey, they'll get a brand new home. Then, in the driver's seat of the car, is a brand new character named Amy. Amy and Caleb talk about the cave, and Amy explains how terrible her parents were, which led her to look for and find the cave. Level 8's page tells us that he exists between the physical world and half in the mental, and the children follow and get lost in the Happy Cave. Amy asks us why we keep looking around, and Caleb says he's scaring away the monster. Amy says she didn't see a monster. Caleb says it was through the windows. Amy says, but the cave doesn't have any windows. Level 9's page states that the luring voice protects and takes neglected children in. Into their vulnerable minds he goes. He's not nice. Study his eyes and see through his disguise. At the start of this level, we are actually in the cave. Caleb says he wants to go home, but Amy reminds him that the man says they'll get to be like nature soon. They just have to eat the supper. A voice in the distance tells the child to be quiet, and that not yelling is what makes this place different from when his parents were around. He says this is what you wanted, and that you're in the Happy Cave now. Caleb says he isn't, and looks down, bringing us back into the car. We then reach level 10, the final level. The next page of the book says, listen close to this secret. There is one way to get out. A strange stone can be found when a child abandons doubt. It's hidden far and deep, never meant to be seen. It is the only way. Amy tells us, in the car, that she's becoming nature, just like he said, and that she's all new. Then it cuts to the both of them in the cave, where Amy appears to be dead and mangled. The voice says supper is ready, and come join your new family. To which Caleb says no, and the horrific face rushes at you. This leads to the final and hardest level of the game, where the monster you ward off is just the face and hands, and it is a total bitch to actually beat. Once you do beat it, you get the final page to the book. To free yourself, convince him. Get the Great Guiding Stone. With it in your hands, he'll finally let you home. Ask yourself, and search your heart, what does escape look like to you? Then, on your game kid, you walk through the forest again, but it's super glitchy. You walk until you reach the game kid in all its glory. This is some serious gameception. You then, in the real world, use the game kid to imprison the giant head. You walk through the calm, peaceful forest in the game until you escape the Happy Cave and run into Amy, who's actually a deer. What? And you walk through the pixelated forest once more to reach the real forest, and then you reach the stone and smash the game kid. And that's the end of the game. Well, there's also this screen of a bunch of chairs, some of them marked with years, but I cannot even begin to get into what that could possibly mean. So that's the story of Deadseat, and truth be told, I have no idea what it means or what's supposed to be happening. The most literal interpretation I can make of this game is that there is, we'll say, a spirit of some kind that is possessing kids' playthings to convince them to kill their parents and make it to the Happy Cave. I don't know if that's actually what's happening, but that's all I can really make of it. But what's going on with the hard mode content? What's real? Does Amy even exist? Does the head with big hands even exist? Does the cave even exist? Probably not, right? But what does exist then? What actually happens? I have some ideas of what this game could be symbolizing or trying to represent, but I have zero answers as to actually what happens in hard mode. Firstly, and I think this is just a given, there's a message in this game about the effect an abusive household has on a child. The portrayal of a dysfunctional relationship between parents here is pretty realistic and uncomfortable. And the way we see Caleb, the protagonist, try to get lost in his game and escape from the real world, where he can be happy, is a pretty understandable and straightforward way of portraying a character in this situation. Secondly, as I just said, I think this game is trying to explore the idea of how kids and grown-ups alike use games and even technology in general as an escape. Sometimes the real world is just too much, and playing a game takes us into a brand new world, whereas there's this whole new world where we can explore without consequence or responsibility. This game literally tries to take us to a new place where we can be happy, and seems to even target kids that are unhappy in their households. It's an escape just like all games are, but this one is much more literal. In fact, maybe this is even more so a cautionary tale. Maybe it's actually about how much we rely on our technology to both give us an escape and give us answers and guide us in life. I also have some other insane ideas of what this game might be trying to explore. I couldn't help but notice how similar events in this game are to actions done within a death cult. There's this figure that targets vulnerable people and offers them a divine place of happiness, and they get there by dying after eating something. I don't know, this game is so weird that it had me thinking all sorts of crazy shit. This game has such an abstract and unique story and method of storytelling that I honestly can't really tell what it's about, which is both frustrating and cool. I like a lot of horror games and other media because it really makes you think about the meaning of the work and the intricacies of it all. But at the same time, I really wish I understood this game better. But anyway, to sum things up, the Deadseat is a pretty cool, fun, and scary game. The atmosphere is incredible and really evokes a feeling of being lost and scared and hopeless. This game is also very stylish, with the pixel art being very nice and the graphics of the real world being very pretty. The FNAF-like gameplay is incredibly fun and gets very stressful. I'm going to give the Deadseat a strong 7.5 out of 10. I recommend you check the game out yourself, even though I just spoiled it all. And that'll be all from me. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.